Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us today for SafetyChain Software's leadership series, Understanding and Complying with GFSI, with special guest speaker Dr. Tatiana Lorca from Ecolab. My name is Barbara Levin. I'll be your host as well as one of your presenters today. We have a very full agenda today, and we'd like to thank all of you for your patience. We have hundreds of people, actually, that we're all trying to get in, and so it took a little bit longer. For privacy reasons, however, if you're out of full screen, you will only see your name and the names of the panelists. We don't show the names of the presenters for those privacy reasons. Today's event is being recorded. On Monday, you'll receive an email that will allow you to download both the slides and the recording. Although we'll be addressing questions at the end of the presentations, you can submit your questions at any time. While we're in full screen, you can go to the toolbar at the top. On the right-hand side, you'll see a down arrow. And when you hit that down arrow, you'll see the Q&A box. Or you can wait until we get to the Q&A section. We'll go out of full screen. At that point, you'll be able to submit your questions. If you're listening via your computer speakers and the audio isn't coming in clearly, please call the number provided in your confirmation email. Also, please be aware that we know we got a little bit of a late start, and we do expect a lot of questions. We've got Kyle Joyce with us. He's SafetyChain's GFSI compliance module expert, and also Dr. Lorca and myself will make ourselves available after the top of the hour to continue to answer your questions. And for those of you that will have to leave, you'll be able to listen to those parts when you get the recording. We're going to start with Dr. Lorca's presentation on the Global Food Safety Initiative, and we will then tell you a little bit about our GFSI compliance module here at SafetyChain for Food and take your questions. And with that, I'm very excited to introduce Dr. Tatiana Lorca. She's the Manager of Food Safety Education and Training for Ecolab's Food and Beverage Division, where she's in charge of developing audit, training, consulting services, and scientific support for the supply chain from farm to fork. Dr. Lorca has research and instruction experience in food science and technology, and is a member of the SQF Institute Technical Advisory Council, the International Association for Food Protection, the Consumer GFSI Technical Committee, and a member of the Advisory Council of the Food Science Department at Virginia Tech. Dr. Lorca holds a master's and doctoral degree in food science and technology and is a registered FQS consultant and trainer, an approved training provider for BRC, and a HACCP trainer as well. With that, welcome, Dr. Lorca, and we're going to start with managing your suppliers. Welcome.
Thank you, Barbara, and welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present this topic to you. I want to go ahead and just jump right in, and I'm going to explain what GFSI is and how this whole thing works. But before I get there, I want to make sure that I emphasize that I understand what side all of you are coming from. Everyone has to manage their suppliers. You as retailers that may be out in the ether sphere, you need to manage your suppliers because the quality of the products that you sell in your stores, whether they are branded products or private label products, you use these to attract and retain customers. And you manufacturers out there in the ether sphere, you need to assure that anything that you bring into the plant, whether it's a raw material, an ingredient, packaging material, or a service which enters into your plant is properly controlled and managed, because anything coming in is a risk to your business. And what we've seen over time, and this has been the case in the U.S. and in other parts of the world, is that most folks typically manage their suppliers by visiting them or sending an auditor or an auditing body out on their behalf to do either a company assessment or audit against a proprietary standard or any kind of standard. And what we've seen over time is that as different players request or require different audits and different standards, the whole business becomes a bit of a confused mess. So, and why is this such a big mess? Well, people generally don't trust the audit results that are generated by someone other than themselves or by a trusted third party. So over time, this has led to a lot of audits and standards and confusion out in the marketplace. So enter GFSI. As we were looking at this very confusing landscape, and I'll use to describe everyone out in the retail industry as well as manufacturing, came very quickly to realize that all of these audit programs were too much of a burden, not only on the manufacturers but also on the retailers. The manufacturers were having way too many audits, a lot of redundancy, a lot of repetitive audits, and then the retailers and food service providers and the companies that are relying on the audit results were starting to see that they had a difficult time telling apples from oranges because they're looking at different kinds of audit results, and they were having a difficult time managing all of their suppliers. So as I said, here enter Global Food Safety Initiative, and in essence, what this started off as was an international food safety task force of the Consumer Goods Forum, and it has grown and changed over time. Just a little bit about the GFSI. This task group has over 600, Consumer Goods Forum has over 650 members, represents 70 countries, and has offices in 3 continents. And what this Global Food Safety Initiative was launched in the year 2000, and this was done following a directive from the CEOs of different food businesses, retail and manufacturers, but mostly retail at that period of time. And they decided that they were concerned about different food safety crises that were happening out in the industry, the proliferation of individual retailer programs, and then way too many audits, which became a burden to suppliers and producers. Currently, the GFSI is made up of representatives from which represent retail, food service, and manufacturers, and they all have representatives on the GFSI technical working groups. And what is GFSI? This slide shows you sort of the overall mission and vision of the GFSI. The vision of the GFSI is safe food for consumers everywhere, and they achieve this by holding steady to their mission, which is driving continuous improvement in food safety to strengthen consumer confidence worldwide. And the key here is worldwide. So GFSI is not centered in the U.S. Their offices are centered in Paris, France, but all of the different representatives represent companies from all over the world. It's really quite an interesting group. Some of the things that GFSI are working towards is to assure that they're reducing food safety risks within the overall supply chain all over the world, that they help manage costs, that they help to develop competencies in food safety and build capacity around the world so that companies in different marketplaces can have access to food safety experts as well as credible food safety programs. And the GFSI is also a phenomenal space for knowledge exchange and networking amongst all these different food safety professionals. Just a quick note about the governance and structure. I don't want to get into too much detail here because there is a lot of things going on with the GFSI. I sit on the technical working groups and have been part of the GFSI group for about 7 years now. But just overall, the GFSI gets its mandates and is overseen by the GFSI Board of Directors, and I'll show you all who's on the Board of Directors here in just a few minutes. This board is supplemented with an advisory council, which is made up of different kinds of companies, manufacturers, as well as academia. And then we've got stakeholders that input into the GFSI process. And stakeholders is anyone who wants to contribute to the GFSI mission and vision. Underneath the GFSI board are different technical working groups, and currently we have 6 that are up and running, and these all work on specific projects under the guidance of the GFSI board. There's two on the left-hand side called Global Markets. That's a capacity building program, and I'll talk about that in a minute. There's one which addresses the guidance document, which is a document that was created by the GFSI in order to benchmark and measure all these different food safety programs that are out there. There's one on animal feeds, one on storage and distribution, and then one on auditor competence. So just going back to what GFSI did. So if you think back to one of my first slides with that great big mess of audit programs and auditing and audited and auditees, what GFSI did was, instead of creating their own food safety standard, they created a guidance document which laid out all the requirements that they expected a credible, strong food safety program to have in place. And this includes, next slide, this includes the standard piece, which is a multi-stakeholder approach for food safety best practice. This is all the food safety stuff. This is having a HACCP program in place, having strong GMPs and other prerequisite programs in place, and then the protocol, which is how the food safety program is run and how the food safety program is audited. And this also addresses the certification, protocol, accreditation, as well as auditor requirements. Those two pieces together, the standard and the protocol, create what's called the scheme. And the scheme, I prefer to change the word scheme to program because scheme has sort of a different connotation here in the States. But this is what GFSI has gone after. By having this established program, they in turn compare all of the existing food safety management systems that are out there against the GFSI requirements. Those that pass get the thumbs up and are recognized, and those that do not pass are basically told to go away or completely go away, or they'll come back and make changes to their program and then pursue benchmarking again. Currently, these are the following programs that are GFSI recognized, which means that in the spirit of GFSI recognition, if they are recognized, the GFSI members and parties which follow the GFSI philosophy will accept any one of these food safety programs and not require the addition of multiple food safety programs. So currently, there are currently 8 internationally recognized food safety programs for manufacturing, one which is farm to fork, and then 3 which are considered to be on-farm in scope. And I'll show you these in just a minute. What's happening right now is that all of these programs are undergoing re-benchmarking, which means that they are being remeasured against the new requirements of the GFSI guidance document version 6. And as I mentioned, with GFSI recognition comes the motto, certified once, recognized everywhere. And what that means in essence is that if a company has BRC in place and they've been successful with it, they've been audited against it, and are currently certified against the BRC, then a buyer from, let's say, a buyer in the U.S. should accept that certification and should not require that supplier to implement SQF or FSCC. We all know that all of these food safety programs are not the same, but they are all recognized as being equivalent, which from a standpoint of food safety, which means from a food safety point of view, all of the GFSI recognized programs will get you as a manufacturer to the same food safety place. What we're seeing in the U.S. is that most stakeholders are saying any one of the GFSI recognized programs they are accepting, which is a great point of view. What we see in other countries is that there's still quite a bit of a regional appeal, and for example, in the UK, most retailers in the UK accept the BRC program because the British Retail Consortium, they wrote it, they love it, and they are hesitant to accept other programs. But in the U.S., we're in a very good spot. As I mentioned, these are the ones that are currently benchmarked and currently recognized. BRC, which is the British Retail Consortium, Dutch HACCP, which is out of the Netherlands, FSCC 22000, which is also known as the ISO program for food safety, the SQF program, Synergy 22000, the International Featured Standard for Food, IFS, the Global Red Meat Program, and the Global Aquaculture Alliance. You can actually see benchmarking and progress if you click onto www.mygfsi.com, and you can see the status of all of these programs that have been submitted to the GFSI for benchmarking against the new requirements. And I can tell you that most of the programs are fairly well far along. BRC and SQF are both in the final week of, in the first phase of stakeholder consultation. But I do want to point out that GFSI is not all benchmarking and recognition of food safety schemes. They do other things, as I mentioned in the previous slide where we had the mission and the vision. The GFSI does provide a wonderful opportunity for food safety professionals to work within a multi-stakeholder platform to address issues which face the industry as a whole. And what I mean by multi-stakeholder is you've got all the players at the table. You have folks that are working for food manufacturers. You have companies that work for packaging manufacturers, companies that work for raw material suppliers. You have auditing groups, certification bodies. You have accreditation bodies. And you have trade associations and NGOs all sitting at the table talking the same language, working together to help improve food safety worldwide. One of the things I also wanted to point out about the GFSI is sort of how it works. And here in this beautiful multicolored slide, you'll see that we typically start the whole process of working on projects by the first step, which is a GFSI stakeholder meeting. And at the stakeholder meeting, it happens once a year at the International Conference of the GFSI. And it's a broad open stakeholder meeting, which is open to anyone who wants to attend. And during that meeting, there's an update on the GFSI work to date presented, as well as a polling of all the stakeholders of, what is GFSI doing right? What are they not doing right? What is it that you want GFSI to work on? And from that meeting, all that information is fed to the GFSI board of directors and the advisory council. They review this, and then they go back to the GFSI technical working groups with proposals on different projects that they would like the technical working groups to work on, or how they feel about the progress so far. Then the GFSI technical working groups will review the information, and they will come back with a recommendation to the board and the advisory council of what projects they should be working on, or updates on current projects. It all, again, feeds back to the GFSI board and the advisory council for review. There's an approval and communication process, and then the output is presented formally at the Global Food Safety Conference once a year. A few other things that are happening with the GFSI, just a few examples of other projects. We've got one project that's currently underway. It's actually got multiple tendrils, and it's called the Global Markets Capacity Building Program, and this addresses capacity building. So it addresses small and less developed businesses which are operating around the world as local sources for primary production and manufacturing to local retailers. And the idea behind this project is giving these small and less developed businesses who don't have the capability to implement an SQF or a BRC or an FSCC 22000 or an IFS program, the tools that they need in order to build up to that point. The next one is auditor competence. We all recognize around the world that that's an issue that the industry has struggled with for many years and continues to struggle with. So we are addressing that formally at the GFSI. And the other things that we're working on are new guidance documents which address other links in the food industry. And just a few examples of this, in 2012 we'll have, we are addressing the food packaging sector, also storage and distribution, and animal feeds. And in 2013, we will be addressing food service and retail. So as you can see, GFSI is going through the entire food chain in order to address all these different parts of the food production chain, because we all recognize and understand that every step in the chain is important. It's not just the manufacturers that have a responsibility here, but it's every player in the chain. If you want a little bit more information about what the GFSI is working on, feel free to pop into mygfsi.com. I want to explain to you guys how all these GFSI recognized programs work. And they work on what we've traditionally called the Plan, Do, Check, Act model. So first step is say what you do. Plan it, document it. The next step is do what you say. That is, you take all that wonderful documentation you got out there and you implement it in your facility. The next step is to prove it. And this is the verification step. And the first step of this proof is proving to yourselves as a business that all the controls that you have in place are working, so that's validation, and that all the things that you have in place inside your facility are actually being followed, and that's verification. And along the spirit of verification comes internal audit, management review, and those other management system concepts. The last step of the proof is the third-party auditor, whether it's an SQF or BRC or FSCC or IFS auditor, would come into the business and audit the plants against their chosen program. And the next step is to improve it. Continual improvement is part of every single food safety management system. It's part of the GFSI, and there's no way to implement a program and not improve it over time. Improvement happens. Improvement happens as corrective actions are implemented, as issues are identified, and as corrections are addressed. I did mention in the beginning that there are 8 currently recognized food safety management systems out there, and I just want to run through the ones that tend to be most popular in the U.S. First one is the Safe Quality Food Code. and this is an integrated food safety and quality management system, which is owned by the Food Marketing Institute, and FMI is the trade association of U.S.-based retailers. The current edition of the SQF code, that's edition 7, covers the entire supply chain from farm to fork, and it's the only GFSI-recognized program with multiple levels. Level 1 addressing food safety fundamentals, Level 2 addressing certified HACCP programs, and then Level 3 addressing a HACCP-based food quality plans as well. And on that note, it's the only program that utilizes a HACCP-based food quality plan to provide enhanced control over quality of the product. Next comes the BRC, and that's the British Retail Consortium. It is a food safety and management system program, which is only for food manufacturers. So from the point that the product is packed into crates or boxes in a packing shed to the point that it's actually processed, they could fall under the BRC standard. And BRC does not require a formal HACCP-based food quality plan like SQF does for Level 3, but what BRC's tactic is to integrate quality control throughout the standard. The next program that we're seeing in the U.S. is the FSSC 22000. It's the Food Safety Systems Certification 22000. And this is a food safety management system for food manufacturing facilities. And what it does is it combines the ISO 22000 standard for food safety and the PAS 220, or as it's currently known now as the ISO 22002-1 prerequisite programs for manufacturers. So this program addresses food safety, a management system, as well as GMPs and prerequisite programs. As I mentioned, this is only for food safety, but companies that typically do FSCC 22000 will combine them with ISO 9001 to cover quality management. And this type of program tends to appeal to facilities which already have ISO-based systems in place. And then we've got the IFS, International Featured Standards. And I'm speaking specifically about the food standard here. It is a food safety and management system. It addresses quality throughout the standard and quality control throughout the standard, and is only for food manufacturers. All of these programs require an initial audit and certification, and they all require an annual recertification so that the supplier can maintain their certification. So as you see there, you saw there on the last slide, these programs are very, very similar. They all start from the same base, which is the same food safety base, which is what's laid out in the GFSI guidance document. So it covers all the same food safety stuff, but in slightly different ways. So why does one company select one program over the other? And what I usually find is that it depends a lot on market share. There are some programs which are stronger in some countries than others. For example, the BRC tends to be stronger in the UK. And that speaks to the second point, which is the geographic customer base. I've had some manufacturers in the U.S. that have chosen to implement the BRC because most of their customers are overseas in the UK. So it made better sense for them to go with the BRC program. There's also a commodity push. One thing that I found pretty interesting was that early on in the U.S., the dairy industry gravitated towards SQF. And I'd say with pretty good confidence, the majority of dairy processors in the U.S. are following the SQF program. Then there's company culture. how does each one of these programs fit the company? And what I've found is some companies will start with one. They'll do a pre-assessment against one of the programs, and it may or may not fit right. So they will switch to another. And I've found this with several food processing companies, and they try these different programs in order to determine which one fits their internal culture a little bit better. And then there are other requirements, such as customer and user requirements. Even though in the spirit of GFSI, any one of these programs will get a company to the same food safety point, there are some retailers and some manufacturers that prefer one program over the other, whether it's because one program has more bells and whistles than the other, or one has a stronger database than others. It tends to be a variety of different reasons. Some companies decide, hey, we want to be able to implement a stronger control over the quality of the product. And those folks that want to do that, they tend to go for SQF. And then there are companies that desire to integrate their programs with other standards, whether it's ISO 9001 for quality or 14001 for environmental management. Or there are some others that want to integrate additional modules. So most of these programs, including SQF, have other modules available. For example, SQF has a module called Ethical Sourcing, which addresses the purchase of materials. And then McDonald's, for example, they have their own module within the SQF audit program. So if you happen to be a supplier to McDonald's and you want to do SQF, well, you can have a combined audit for the SQF portion and the McDonald's requirements. Now, making the best use of these programs. GFSI is not the magic bullet. Okay? Selecting one of these programs is not the end-all, be-all, but it's a phenomenal starting point. So I like to tell my customers to use one of these GFSI programs as a baseline. So if you are a retailer or if you are bringing in materials within your business, use the presence of an actively certified GFSI-recognized program as a baseline to decide whether or not you want to bring in materials or ingredients from a particular supplier. You could also use this to and base it on the risk of the supplier material. You know that as a minimum, any of the GFSI-recognized programs cover all the food safety requirements that we need in the world, and then it also covers the regulatory requirements that are required in different parts of the world. But don't let that be all of it. Be like Reagan, trust but verify. What you will see is that even if you ask all your suppliers to hold a GFSI-recognized certification, you will see that the majority of these program owners also have their own database. And so as you make this request of your suppliers and they tell you, yeah, we're SQF certified, and they send you a copy of the certificate, just jump on the SQF database, and you can actually check to see if the certificate is valid. Because if a company doesn't show up on the database, there's a good chance that company is not really certified. Also, as you are working with these programs, make sure that you communicate very clearly your expectations and specifications. What you will see is that every single one of these programs address the fact that customer specifications must be in place. So ask yourselves if you have specific requirements and make sure that you clearly communicate these to your suppliers and manufacturers. And also, for these programs, use this to reduce redundancy. It's still within your right to go audit every single one of your suppliers if you want to. But we all recognize that we are all doing more with fewer resources. So use a GFSI-recognized program as a starting point and have use that so that then if you do decide to visit your suppliers, your visit can be much shorter and can be much more focused on your needs, on your customer-specific requirements. Just a quick example of different groups that, one different group that uses the GFSI-recognized programs as their starting point is the Metro Group. And Metro is an international retailer that's based in Germany. And what they found by mandating GFSI-recognized certification programs throughout their entire supply chain is that they got a massive cost reduction. They were able to reduce the number of existing audits that their team was doing tremendously, and that had a direct impact on their bottom line. They needed fewer staff to do their own audits of their suppliers and had a major cost reduction as a result. They also found that recalls decreased in the last year, and they found a 90% decrease in recalls. And then the other way that Metro has been using the GFSI programs is through capacity building. And I mentioned that's one of the programs that we're working on at the GFSI, and they're using this program to train their small suppliers, as well as their suppliers in emerging markets such as Egypt, Russia, Vietnam, and China with this Global Markets program. And what that's allowed them to do is to help them stabilize the availability of their supply into their groceries and has delivered quality expectations into their grocery stores. And they also saw a reduction of post-harvest losses up to 40%. Now, keys to success and compliance, I'd say the number one key is communication. Make sure that there's very clear communication from you as a retailer or you as a manufacturer to the supplier of ingredients, raw materials, and services. Let them know what you expect out of those businesses and establish your threshold. If your threshold is simply, I just want a copy of your certificate, great. Let them know that. If you want to see the whole report, let them know that. If you want to see how they dealt with their corrective actions, let them know that. All of these programs will give you the ability to have that much insight into your suppliers. And then once you communicate your expectations, hold them accountable. One of the things that we have seen in the U.S. is that some retailers came out with very strong deadlines early on, saying if you do not meet, if you do not implement and be certified against one of these GFSI-recognized programs within a certain period of time, you will no longer do business with this retail chain. So use the stick. At the end of the day, these programs make a business better and better. And then look at what your suppliers are sending you. And what I mean by this is there are a lot of folks that own the supplier management program, either within a retail business or within a food manufacturing facility. And they have a checklist of things that they ask all of their suppliers to have. Maybe they want a copy of their report. Maybe they want the certificate, all those good things. Now, if you ask for information from your supplier, it could be a certificate of analysis, it could be a letter of conformity, what have you, read it, look at it, and then make sure that you are making the appropriate business decisions. I run into too many businesses that will require an audit report, maybe their last audit report, and then will just take that audit report as soon as they receive it and stick in a drawer where it does no one any good, and they never really look at the report and see what's happening within that business. And then also leverage technology where appropriate. So there's a lot of wonderful technologies out there which will allow you to have better visibility into your suppliers and as manufacturers, which will also allow you to have fantastic visibility into your entire supply chain. And I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this, but we can help at Ecolab through training, consulting, and supporting. And I'm just going to flip through slide 27 and 28 and just let you know that we can help, and we offer consulting. We also offer public training courses in multiple locations, including California, throughout the year. So please feel free to check out our website, and we do offer training in English and in Spanish. And there's a snapshot of our calendar. And we also provide a little bit of information. We've got a frequently asked questions newsletter which goes out once a month, which addresses a specific topic that comes up, whether it comes up in training or later on. And these are all posted on our Ecolab website and answer a burning question about hairnets or about compliance with chemical storage or validation and verification requirements for specific programs. And with that, I'll turn that back over to Barbara.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lorca. What we're going to do now is go out of full screen. I'm going to take just a very few minutes to address that last point about leveraging technology to tell you a little bit about SafetyChain for Food and our GFSI compliance module, and then we will, as we mentioned earlier, stay on so that we can get to everybody's questions. We'll stay on past the top of the hour, and it looks like we've already got a lot of questions lined up, so feel free to start putting them in now. And let me see here. I'm trying to, okay. So SafetyChain for Food, doesn't look like this loaded very well. SafetyChain for Food is a cloud-based, full end-to-end FSQA solution that enforces safety and quality compliance at every point along a company's supply chain. This covers inbound, during production, and outbound. It stands alone or it integrates with other systems that you might have already made investments in. The key benefits are we save time, we save labor, and we create efficiencies that lead to regulatory, non-regulatory, and third-party FSQA compliance. Our solutions are designed to get the right information to the right people in the fastest manner possible. We're very focused on prevention. We help proactively prevent problems before they start. For like your FSQA compliance smoke alarm in the sky, so that we're gathering information, it's being analyzed in real time, alerts are sent, and this helps you prevent problems before they start versus reactively trying to figure out where problems along the supply chain started and how to repair that damage. We have a very comprehensive GFSI compliance module. Its major benefits include the ability for you to be audit ready on demand with information that's time and date stamped at your fingertips. We have compliance for all schemes. We help, again, reduce the time, labor, and costs associated with certifications and audits, and we eliminate manual filing processes and paper-based forms. I'm not going to go through all of these features right now. All of this information is available on the SafetyChain website. Because I do know that some of you, I also have some screenshots which I'll let you look at here. And again, all of this is available on our website. These are just some shots of our SQF capabilities. And what we want to do is get to your questions now. So let me give you a little bit of information if you are, if you do have to leave in about 8 minutes at the top of the hour. Like I said, we'll stay on to get to all of your questions. On Monday, you will receive an email that will allow you to download a PDF of the slides as well as the recording. If you have follow-up questions for Dr. Lorca or about the services that Ecolab provides, You can see those email addresses and phone number there. If you have follow-up questions about SafetyChain's capability, you can email them to me. You see my email address there. If you'd like to see a demonstration of our solution, including our GFSI capabilities, you can go to our website and register for a demo day on August 23rd. And also on Monday, because we've sort of rushed through this, we want to make sure that we get to your questions. It'll also allow you to ask for a private demonstration of our GFSI or any other capabilities, pricing and things like that. We are also very proud to be sponsoring the Food Safety Tech Supply Chain Vulnerabilities Conference, October 11th and 12th in Philadelphia. There's a $200 discount off of the regular registration price for Friends of SafetyChain. You can go to the webinars and events page on our website to register and get that discount. With that, I'm going to start to field some of these questions for you, Dr. Lorca. I'm going to start with Julie, who has said somehow she was under the impression that Dutch HACCP was being withdrawn. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. Dutch HACCP, the owners of Dutch HACCP have decided not to put Dutch HACCP forward for re-benchmarking against the GFSI Guidance 6, as all the other programs are up to right now. They're going to use it more as a stepping stone program to help companies get ready for FSCC 22000.
Okay, great. Harry is saying, you mentioned BRC did not require HACCP, but later in the presentation said that GFSI starts with the same base, which includes HACCP. Can you elaborate a little bit further on that?
Sorry about that. What I meant to say, and hopefully it came across this way, is that BRC, it does require HACCP. Okay, all of the programs require HACCP, but BRC does not require a company to undertake a HACCP-based food quality, a HACCP-based study of their quality of the product. So as HACCP forces your company to take a look at what you're making and its intended use and all that good stuff, and take a look at your biological, chemical, and physical hazards, SQF requires you to do the same thing, but then also to take a look at the impact that different steps in the process or different inputs has on the quality of the product. And that's what is the food quality plan. So BRC does not require that you do a HACCP-based food quality plan. That's what I was trying to articulate.
Okay, thank you. Dundee is asking, for U.S. companies to export to Latin America and Asia, which program can best cover all in terms of supplier compliance and end-user confidence?
Ooh, excellent question. I'd say any one of them. And where I would start as a business is to reach out to your customers in these different regions and ask them, do you have a preference? Sometimes that's what you got to do. At the end of the day, all of the programs will cover the same things. So that's my advice to you. Any one of these programs will be appropriate.
Great, thank you. Valerie is asking, can you please explain how best aquaculture practices fit into GFSI? Is it recognized as a GFSI certification scheme?
Ooh, best aquaculture practices?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to take a step back and just and say it's a little bit outside of my scope. If you mean best aquacultural practices as analogous to good manufacturing practices, but those practices that you would implement in an aquaculture facility where you may be raising farmed catfish, for example, then any one of the GFSI recognized programs would take that into account. So the GFSI recognized program is generic enough to be implemented into any type of facility that falls within the scope of that program. If you happen to be running a fish farm, then instead of doing the GMPs that you typically see within a food manufacturing facility. You would implement good agricultural management practices. There is a program called the Global Aquaculture Standard, and that is a GFSI-recognized program which is specific to the aquaculture industry. And unfortunately, I don't know that much about it, but it is a GFSI-recognized program. It is specific to aquaculture, and it would meet the needs of a company that is playing in that space.
Great, thank you. We still have quite a few questions, and like we said earlier, we will stay on to answer those. For those of you, it's just a few minutes before the top of the hour. For those of you that do need to leave, thank you so much for joining us today. We're leaving now the follow-up email addresses. And again, if you'd like to learn more about the SafetyChain GFSI module, when you get the slides and the recording on Monday, there'll be a box where you can check to set up a private demonstration or get pricing or talk to one of our solutions experts. So if you are leaving us, thank you so much. And for everybody that's staying with us, we're going to just jump right back into the questions. Dr. Lorca, Julie is asking, what are most retailers requiring as far as their private label products? For example, they may accept a BRC-certified manufacturer, but since an audit is based on a random selection of data, how does the retailer ensure that the audit indeed covered their product? I'm going to jump in and say, well, one of the ways to ensure that is to use SafetyChain's GFSI module, but from an industry best practices point of view, how would you respond to that?
Oh, that's a great question, and unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that. I'm not a retailer, and I'm not going to pretend to be one. But I imagine that the retailers have the ability to require that. And at the end of the day, a retailer can always send out a representative on their behalf to do a short assessment of the supplier with their specific requirements in mind. And we are seeing that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Julie is asking, how do you find an auditor registered to audit these schemes?
Excellent question. It depends on the scheme. I know that right now SQF is the only one of these management systems that actually has a public database where you can search for these auditors. And in order to do that, you'd go into the SQF website, click on SQF Professionals, and then there's an active link where you can click search for an SQF professional. So I would start there. As far as I'm aware, none of the other programs have a formal public registration program like SQF does. So start with SQF, and if you're looking for a BRC auditor, you may want to start on the SQF website, funny enough, and then find those SQF auditors, and there's a really good chance that those auditors are also auditing against the other schemes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's see. Tamara is asking, how does this information apply to equipment manufacturers, such as beverage equipment manufacturers or coffee and juice equipment?
Ooh, excellent question. Well, right now, GFSI is, as I mentioned earlier, is sort of chugging along the food supply chain. We are looking at primary production, we're looking at the little guys, we're looking at packaging, looking at food service and retail and all those others. Equipment manufacturers are going to come on down the line from a GFSI perspective. Now, there currently are programs out there for equipment manufacturers, and a good majority of those manufacturers will have an ISO 9001-based system in place, which covers the management system for the company and then the manufacturing of the product. So it's going to be a quality-based certification. There are other schemes out there which then would apply to an equipment manufacturer. I understand that there are certification bodies and standards that specifically work with these different suppliers. So from that perspective, there are some tools out there, and then GFSI will be spreading its wings and likely looking at this sector a few years down the line. If you are a food manufacturer and you are buying equipment for your plant, then you would assure that that manufacturer meets industry-recognized standards and industry-recognized guidelines.
Great, thank you. Elizabeth is asking, do you have any advice on how to go about procedures for approval and monitoring of suppliers of services for our BRC?
Good question. I'd say a good starting point is to create to do a risk analysis of your suppliers, of services. So lay them out on a piece of paper. Who are they? What do they do? And then decide what level of risk they impose on your business. Once you establish that, and what I see a lot of companies do is they'll use a typical risk analysis matrix where they will classify these suppliers low, medium, or high risk. Once you establish that, you then establish what are the requirements that you mandate these suppliers have in place. So, for example, that maybe you want all of their reps to have some kind of specific training or GMP training in place. Or maybe you require those suppliers to have your own GMP training as soon as they hit the plant floor. All those kinds of things would be the things that you would require them to have. At a minimum, I'd ask them to provide you with a specification of their service. And this can be either written into the contract or a letter, or it can simply be a document which says, hey, this is the name of the company. So I'm going to use Ecolab as an example. We have a specification for our cleaning and sanitation service, chemical service, and it's a one-pager, and it has the name of the company. So it says, hey, we're Ecolab. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we're going to do inside your plant. And this is the characteristics of the account manager, which will be set in foot in your plant. So it can be very simply handled on a one-pager. That would give you enough confidence to help support your risk rating and then give you some backup documentation for that specific services supplier. And then just make sure that you have the documentation in place and that you receive it. And what I also find is it's a good idea to monitor those suppliers. So when they conduct a service either at your facility or maybe at a sister facility, get some feedback and use that in order to help monitor those suppliers so that you can see where they're doing well, where they're falling down, what are the issues that you may need to address with that services supplier.
Great, thank you. I have a question here from Donna. I have a feeling, I'm going to read it to you, and it seems like it might require a little bit more time than we have here. I'll read it to you, and then if you want to go for it, if not, then we can suggest that Donna contact you with your email address for maybe a little bit of a more lengthy discussion. But Donna is saying, was hoping to learn more about being compliant with the 3 requirements for our suppliers: training competency of our supervisors over food safety work and regulatory compliance review.
I think, Donna, if you would get back to me, we can set up a call, because I think I need to understand exactly what your question is and how I can best address that.
I thought that was going to be the answer. And Donna, you should still be able to see Dr. Lorca's email address on the screen there. Ed is asking, how does FSMA and specifically the HARPC tie into GFSI?
Specifically the HARPC, unfortunately I don't recognize that acronym, so I can't speak to that. FSMA is very much tied into any of the GFSI-recognized programs, because every single one of the GFSI-recognized programs says, hey, you got to meet the law of the land in the country that you're manufacturing products in, and in the country that you are shipping products to. So so the FSMA requirements are a U.S. requirement. What we will find is that there's a lot of overlap between what FSMA is asking manufacturers to do and these food safety management system requirements. You can say with great confidence that if you are doing one of these GFSI recognized programs and you're doing it well, and that you are meeting the majority of the FSMA requirements already, because they're drafted into these standards, and the ones that are not explicit in these standards, you'd have to do anyway under the umbrella of you've got to meet the law of the land in the country that you're manufacturing product.
Okay, great, thank you. Jenny is asking, at the moment, GAP certification is voluntary. When will it become mandatory? Will growers also be required to be GFSI certified?
Ooh, excellent question. Well, I tell you, at this point in time, all of these certifications are voluntary, or as one of my consultants says, they're voluntold. That means that it's voluntary for any processor to implement or grower to implement these, and the person that's buying the product will tell them, hey, if you don't do this, you won't be doing business with us. So they are all voluntary. I don't imagine that they will become mandatory from a regulatory perspective, but I do expect that as retailers keep reaching down and manufacturers keep reaching down their supply chain, that they will be prompting the growers to implement these programs as well. I'd say it's just a matter of time.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Dundee is saying this one is for labeling policies in relation to grocery store items. I keep hearing that the composite label, from multiple suppliers to make one product has this moving target number of 20 to 25% variation from its true formulation and ingredient statement. Want me to read that one again?
Well, no, because unfortunately, this one is out of my area of expertise. I'm not a labeling expert, so I cannot speak to this question. Sorry about that.
Okay. We'll see if we can find that answer for you somewhere and get that to you. Ed has contributed that the Hazard Analysis and Risk-Based Preventive Controls, HARPC versus HACCP, mandatory as of July 4th, 2012. Excuse me. Let's see.
Okay, so
yeah.
So this is it goes back to the FSMA question. So these hazard analysis and risk-based controls is GMPs and HACCP, and that's all that this is saying. FSMA has done a very good job of rebranding HACCP. I'm going to say that very carefully, because as you read it, FSMA is talking about HACCP for everyone, and assuring that the building blocks of HACCP, your GMPs, your prerequisite programs, your good agricultural practices, whatever they may be, are strong, robust, in place, they work, and that they're being followed. So these HACCP risk-based and prerequisite control programs are all addressed within the GFSI-recognized programs.
Fabulous. And I think we're actually getting close to the end. Let's see. Hassan is asking, is it required that an internal company auditor be certified?
Ooh, good question. Currently, under all of the programs, no, there is not a requirement that the internal auditors be certified. All of the standards require that all the internal auditors be trained. So you as a business would determine what type of internal auditor training is appropriate to your team, and then make sure that is executed. What I see as best practices is that typically a company will have at least one lead auditor, and that lead internal auditor will be trained in internal audit techniques, and that can be done through a classroom setting. There's lots of providers out there that provide that internal auditor training. There are also some online resources. For example, if you check out the American Society for Quality's website, you'll find some internal auditor training available there. So that's step one, and then that lead internal auditor would then turn around and train the rest of the internal audit team. Okay, so it's training. Now, as far as certification, no standard requires that there be an additional formal certification for the internal auditors that goes above and beyond the training. There are some caveats, for example, within the SQF code requirements that will require an internal auditor within a multi-site scheme, a multi-site certification program, to have that auditor hold stronger credentials, such as SQF auditor training, because that auditor is actually auditing the SQF system of the suppliers underneath its multi-site certification. But that's something that you'd have to dig into the details of SQF to look at. But long story short, there is no certification required for internal auditors under any program at this time, but all of the programs do require appropriate internal auditor training.
Great. And believe it or not, Dr. Lorca, that was our last question. So I'd like to first thank you so much for participating in our leadership series. This I hope everybody found this as valuable and informative as we here did. And I'd like to thank everybody for this fabulous interactive Q&A session and for joining us today. And again, look out for your email on Monday so that you can download the slides and the recording and make other requests about additional information. And with that, good morning or good afternoon to everybody, depending on where you are. And we hope to see you online soon at another SafetyChain web event. Thank you, everybody.